The Galactic Empire had conquered thousands of worlds, assimilating species into its hierarchy with ruthless efficiency. When the great fleets arrived at Earth, they did not expect resistance. From orbit, their observations confirmed the usual patterns: power centered around the males of the species, crude technological advancements, and an absence of centralized planetary defense. They had seen it before. A simple conquest. Legate Viren, commander of the Imperial Expeditionary Force, had studied the transmissions of Earth's leaders. The negotiations, the military posturing, it all followed a predictable sequence. The males boasted of strength. Their leaders postured in suits and uniforms, speaking in clipped, declarative sentences. Some knelt immediately, others blustered, but all followed the same tired script. Viren's advisors assured him that Earth's conquest would be swift. The humans would resist at first, then crumble as all had before them. But then, there was something peculiar, something in the background of their recordings. An overlooked presence, seemingly insignificant. The women, they were always there, unnoticed but ever present. Standing behind their male counterparts, their expressions measured. Some were dismissive, others watchful. A few carried themselves with a quiet confidence that was unsettling. The Empire's scholars dismissed them outright. They were not the warriors, not the decision-makers. They were secondary. The first phase of occupation went flawlessly. The Empire established control over key infrastructures, pacified local forces, and rounded up prominent figures for study. The males were predictable, brave but straightforward, defiant but manageable. The scientists analyzed their biological limitations, noting their physical constraints, their emotional outbursts, their lack of strategic subtlety. It was an unremarkable assessment. Then the first anomaly occurred. A female captive, part of a group of political detainees, managed to slip free from her restraints. She did not fight her captors in open conflict. She did not charge blindly like her male counterparts. She waited, observed, and then acted. A single Imperial soldier went missing during the night shift. Another was found in a maintenance corridor, his throat crushed. Surveillance footage was inconclusive. Somehow, she had avoided every camera, every automated patrol. By morning, the entire containment unit was empty. No alarms had been triggered. No ships had left orbit. The prisoners had simply disappeared. Viren ordered a full-scale investigation, but there was nothing to investigate. No signs of forced entry or escape. The security logs had been subtly manipulated, the biometric data altered. These were not the actions of a desperate refugee. This was calculated, methodical, predatory. The first reports were dismissed. A statistical outlier, an anomaly. But then, similar incidents began appearing in different regions. A woman in a research facility was being examined for psychological resistance. She had not spoken in 3 days. The scientists, frustrated with her silence, brought in neural scanners to force compliance. The following morning, the lead researcher was found dead, his assistants catatonic. The woman had vanished. When the footage was reviewed, the log simply ended, as if someone had erased time itself. Then came the battle reports. Imperial patrols encountering human resistance found themselves falling not to brute force but to precision ambushes. Their sensors failed at critical moments. Their troops grew agitated, fearful. The humans were supposed to be weak, their strategy crude. And yet, it was the women who began to shift the tides. One outpost, thought secure, was infiltrated without a single alarm being triggered. The station forces, 40 elite Imperial troops, were never found. The only evidence left behind was a single phrase, scrawled in the Empire's own script across a command console. "We are awake now." It was then that the Empire realized it had made a mistake. Not in invading Earth, not in underestimating its technology or its soldiers, but in assuming that the true predators of this world were the men. The silence in Legate Viren's command chamber was unnatural. A room that once buzzed with the efficiency of Imperial order was now steeped in an unspoken dread. Reports from across Earth painted a picture that defied every known conquest pattern. The resistance was not just growing, it was evolving. and it was being led by those the Empire had deemed irrelevant. Viren reviewed the latest footage, his jaw tightening as the loop played again. A squadron of Imperial enforcers patrolled the ruins of a government facility, scanning for human insurgents. They moved in perfect formation, weapons primed, their augmented visors pulsing with data feeds. The corridors were empty. The air was still. Yet one by one the soldiers dropped. No gunfire, no explosions, no visible enemy, just a shifting of shadows, a flicker of motion on the edges of their vision, and then nothing. By the time reinforcements arrived, the squad was gone. Not dead, gone. Their biometrics vanished from the tracking systems as if they had been erased from existence. It was no longer an occupation. It was a hunt. And for the first time, the Empire was not the predator. The scholars and tacticians, the same ones who had dismissed humanity as primitive, now spoke in hushed, uncertain tones. The females of the species displayed an unsettling adaptability. Where the males fought with defiance and brute force, the women moved with precision. They struck in silence, exploiting weaknesses that Imperial intelligence had not even considered weaknesses. The first major counterstrike came without warning. A central command hub, deep within Imperial-controlled territory, suddenly went dark. The automated defenses were untouched. The external sentries remained at their posts. Yet every officer inside was gone. No traces of conflict. No sign of forced entry. The facility's data logs were completely intact, except for one single, chilling transmission. A whisper. A voice speaking in flawless Imperial dialect. Your kind does not understand the nature of waiting. The Empire responded with brute force. Curfews were imposed. Drones patrolled the streets, scanning for signs of insurgent activity. Imperial leaders ordered mass detainments, desperate to regain control. And yet, the disappearances continued. Entire patrols wiped out without so much as a distress signal. She was unremarkable at first glance, small frame, no visible weapons. She did not beg, did not scream, did not even flinch when shackled in Imperial containment. Viren himself observed her interrogation, determined to extract the secret behind the growing nightmare that threatened his empire. She met his gaze with something he had not expected. Not fear, not defiance, amusement. You still don't understand, do you? She said softly. Viren stiffened. He had interrogated countless species, broken the wills of kings and warlords. Yet there was something profoundly unsettling in the way she spoke, as if she were the one observing him. He leaned forward. Understand what? She smiled. We were never your prey. The lights flickered. The security systems, flawless in design. Fault. The woman did not move, and yet, she was no longer alone. From the shadows, from the very walls of the Imperial fortress, others emerged. Silent, calculated. They had not come to plead. They had not come to negotiate. They had come to end the hunt. Viren stood at the helm of his failing empire, the glow of distant stars casting cold light upon his command chamber. His fingers curled into fists, the once pristine armor of his rank now marred by scuffs and the weight of desperation. He had underestimated them. Even now, with fleets burning across the sky and Imperial systems shutting down one by one, he still struggled to understand how it had come to this. The war had not been one of brute force. The Empire had fought planetary insurgencies before, had crushed rebellions and dismantled resistance movements. But this was something different. The women of Earth had not fought a war in the way the Empire had prepared for. They had not met the soldiers in open battle, had not thrown themselves at the Imperial war machine like so many before them. Instead, they had turned the Empire's own systems against it. At first, it had seemed like an unfortunate series of coincidences. A malfunction in the fleet's communication relays, preventing coordinated response. A sabotage in the resource supply lines, leaving key outposts without reinforcements. Then, whole squadrons went missing without so much as a distress call. Battles ended before they had even begun, with Imperial soldiers turning on one another in confusion, their minds filled with images and whispers that did not belong. And all the while the women watched. The Imperial fleet, once unmatched in its discipline, had begun to fracture. Veteran soldiers deserted. Entire divisions refused to deploy. The psychological toll was unlike anything the Empire had encountered. It was not fear of death that had broken them. It was the realization that they were prey in a way they could not understand. The war had reached the home systems. Viren could scarcely believe the reports that poured in from beyond Earth's orbit. It was not just the human women. They had spread their tactics to other species, liberated entire colonies under imperial rule, turned former subjects into allies. The strategies they employed were neither brute force nor reckless defiance. They operated in precision strikes, dismantling the Empire from within, much like they had done on Earth. The tactics were insidious, woven with an understanding of human psychology that no imperial training manual could counter. Entire planets surrendered without a shot being fired. Some did not even realize they had been conquered until it was too late. Viren's own officers began questioning him. Not openly at first, but with lingering glances and unreadable expressions. He had ordered mass executions, hoping to regain control, but the executions had only deepened the silence. The imperial ranks were no longer made up of conquerors. They were ghosts waiting for the inevitable. A distress call came from the imperial core, the heart of the Empire itself. He watched from his warship's viewports as the once impenetrable defenses of the homeworld flickered and collapsed. The planetary shields had been disabled from within. The automated defense systems turned against their own command centers. The codes had been rewritten, the protocols changed by unseen hands. And then, as the skies above the imperial throne darkened, the final message arrived. It did not come in the form of a demand for surrender. There were no threats, no ultimatums. Just a simple message, broadcast in every imperial dialect, in every sector where the Empire still held control. It was never about strength. It was never about war. You were always looking in the wrong direction. The realization struck Viren with a weight heavier than any battlefield defeat. The Empire had spent generations perfecting warfare, believing that dominance came from power, from technology, from brute conquest. But the true predators of humanity had never needed open conflict. They had been patient, watching, waiting for the moment when the great machine of the Empire would collapse under its own arrogance. And now, as the imperial banners burned and the stars filled with the remnants of a broken fleet, Viren finally understood. The hunt was over, and they had lost. The remnants of the Galactic Empire drifted through the void, fractured and leaderless. Once an unbreakable force that had spanned thousands of systems, it was now little more than scattered fleets, isolated warlords clinging to the edges of their former dominion. The homeworld was gone, its great citadel silent, its throne abandoned. And among the hushed corridors of dying warships, the whispers remained. Legate Viren sat alone in what had once been the command chamber of a warfleet. His once pristine armor bore the scars of retreat, his mind tormented by the slow unraveling of everything he had ever known. He had witnessed the fall with his own eyes, had watched as the Empire's greatest weapons became useless, as entire fleets succumbed to an enemy that never needed to fire a shot. The women of Earth had rewritten the very concept of warfare, replacing brute force with something far more terrifying: patience, subterfuge, inevitability. They had not conquered with overwhelming firepower, nor with sheer numbers. They had let the Empire's arrogance devour itself. And now, the once mighty war machine lay in ruins, its former rulers reduced to fugitives, clinging to the edges of a galaxy that no longer belonged to them. But it was not over. Somewhere in the abyss of deep space, a final Imperial fleet remained, hidden among the remnants of fallen strongholds. The surviving commanders gathered in the shadows, their voices hushed, their movements careful. They spoke of retaliation, of a last stand against the force that had toppled them. They whispered of a counterstrike, of a reclamation of power. But even here, in the darkest corners of the galaxy, they were being watched. The silence that had haunted them since Earth was still present, lingering like a specter just beyond the edge of perception. The missing soldiers, the vanished warships, none had been found. The enemy had never revealed itself fully, had never needed to. And even now, as the last remnants of the empire sought to reclaim their former might, the truth remained. They were already lost. Byron knew it. He had known it since the moment he had seen the first Imperial station go dark, since the first whisper had reached his ears. This war had ended long before the Empire had realized it had begun. The moment they had set foot on Earth, the moment they had dismissed its women as irrelevant, their fate had been sealed. He stood, his movements slow, weary. The chamber was silent, save for the faint hum of failing power systems. The others, those who still clung to the dream of Imperial resurgence, did not see what he saw. They still believed in victory, in a return to what was. But there was no return. The hunt had ended. The Empire had not just been defeated. It had been rewritten, its very foundation dismantled and replaced with something new, something unseen. The true rulers of this war had never needed to sit upon a throne, had never needed to declare themselves. They had already won. And now the galaxy belonged to them. The remnants of the Empire scattered like dust. Their once mighty fleets now fractured. Their commanders reduced to fugitives whispering of past glories. The galaxy, which had once trembled beneath their iron grip, no longer feared them. Fear had a new face now. A silent, patient force that moved without announcement, that did not claim dominion through grand displays of power, but instead through the quiet, methodical unraveling of an empire that had believed itself eternal. Legate Byron had seen the end long before his peers. He had watched the war shift in ways no imperial doctrine could explain. He had seen how his soldiers did not fall in open combat but vanished, how outposts did not burn but simply went silent, how their enemies, the women of Earth, never fought on imperial terms but instead rewrote the very nature of the battlefield. He sat alone now, aboard what was left of his flagship, staring into the cold expanse of space. The stars remained indifferent to the fall of his people. The Empire's colonies, its once loyal subjects, had already moved on. Some had turned against their former masters, others had simply adjusted to the new order. There had been no negotiations, no demands. The enemy had never needed to conquer in the traditional sense. They had waited, observed, and when the moment was right, they had dismantled everything the Empire had built with the precision of a hunter dismantling its prey. Byron's fingers curled into fists. He had been raised in a civilization that had known nothing but victory. Conquest was the natural order, the unchallenged right of the strong. And yet, strength had not saved them. It had blinded them. The Empire had relied on brute force, on technological superiority, on an understanding of war that assumed all species fought the same way. The women of Earth had never played by those rules. Byron had not seen a battlefield in months. There were no more battlefields, not in the way the Empire had understood them. The war had become something else entirely. It was in the way commanders disappeared overnight, their stations abandoned as if they had never existed. It was in the way imperial supply chains collapsed not from enemy attacks, but because their own people no longer trusted one another. It was in the whispers that spread through what remained of his forces, the knowledge that they were being watched, that every desperate move they made had already been anticipated. They had lost not because they had been defeated in combat, but because they had never truly understood who they were fighting. Byron exhaled slowly, the weight of inevitability settling upon him. He had spent his life enforcing the will of an empire that no longer existed. He had led conquests, commanded fleets, brought entire civilizations to their knees. And yet, for all his victories, he had never truly been the predator. The realization was not a sudden epiphany but a slow, creeping certainty, like the inevitable descent of night. He had been prey from the moment his fleet had entered Earth's orbit. He had simply not known it yet. A sound echoed through the empty corridors of the warship. A whisper, faint, almost imperceptible. Byron did not move. He did not call for his guards, did not reach for his weapon. There was no point. He had seen this before, had watched as entire stations succumbed to silence. He knew what came next. He closed his eyes. The hunt was over, and he was the last to fall.